So my name is Christian Gonzales-Rivera. Just a little bit of background about me. I'm an urban planner by training, and right now I'm teaching public policy. Last semester I taught as part of the Thomas Hunter Honors Program a class on politics of aging. So it was mostly a seminar, really. I mean, it's like for honor students, and now I'm teaching Introduction to Public Policy as part of the Roosevelt House Public Policy Institute. And it's quite a time to be teaching public policy. I mean, it's like, which I would say, I mean, it's like, is the first challenge of, sort of managing a classroom where people are steeped in the topic. People are steeped in public policy, in the opinions and the narratives, in the media. And then also the way that they intersect with the individuals who come in. I mean, it's like, as you know, I mean, it's like we're blessed at Hunter to have a very, very diverse student body, people with very different experiences, whose families, I mean, have had very different experiences of the world, and all of that is very present in my classroom. Both last semester and this semester. And so, yes, for me, I mean, it's like the very first challenge is sort of facilitating all of that. I very much see myself as a facilitator of conversations, and importantly, I mean, it's because we're in a classroom, really the very biggest challenge in public policy is to make sure that discussions don't stay in just opinion and experience, but in fact move towards analysis. Um, and so at the same time, I mean, it's like one of the challenges in teaching public policy is that a lot of public policy textbooks, I have like three of them piled next to me here, really teach public policy as being a process and a process that really centers government first and foremost, for good reason. But in essence, I mean, it's like the message that I get from reading the textbooks is as if the point of public policy is to figure out a way for how your ideas can you follow a process in order for them to be codified as laws, rules, regulations, etc. in government. And while it is true, of course, I mean, it's like that public policies are how we collectively make the decisions that govern our societies, but as codified in government. While that part is true, what I want to make sure that the students take away is that they themselves are agents of change. While in government is where policies are ultimately made, the fact is that much policy actually gets made before it even arrives in government, right? I mean, it's like in venues ranging from kitchen tables to the many, many organized interests that in practice actually create those rules and regulations and even laws as well that then get taken up by government, right? I mean, it's like, so government isn't the only actor here. And so what I want the students to take away from that is that, yes, I mean, it's like they already have the prerequisites to be able to participate in policy just by observing the world. And part of the tools that I want to give them as an educator are the how to label what they see, how to see, I mean, it's like how the outcomes that they're looking at are actually the result of particular policy outputs that they can identify and see how they work and how that mechanism results in those outcomes that they see. So, and importantly, and this is something that's, very much true. There's not one canonical way in public policy to do this, right? I mean, it's like very often you see some textbook talk about a four-step method to policy analysis, others talk about a six-step, others a seven-step, etc. But regardless of what those steps are, I mean, it's like the idea is that you translate values and you translate the you translate values is the first thing. And second, different people see problems in a different way. I mean, it's like, two people could be living in the same neighborhood, but have different backgrounds. And some don't even see some of the problems that happen in that community. While for others, it's very clear, right? So all of those variables at the front end create a situation where it's not always straightforward. There's not one canonical way to get those ideas into public policy. And when you think about it as well, there are some people who get their ideas of public policy by being in the same room as Mayor Mamdani or Donald Trump, and others might take a longer path to get there as well. So all of those are the conditions that are in the world already, which make it difficult to say that there is a strict method. I mean, it's like for getting your ideas into policy. So bringing all of that together, for me, equity in assessing whether students are learning is not so much whether they can memorize one particular way of doing public policy, but rather what I want to assess is how do they move from their existing condition? I mean, it's like the experiences and the opinions that they came in with, And how did the tools and the experiences and the touch points in class shift their opinion, challenge their opinion, support their opinion, shift them in any way from where they already were? So it's really about the movement from where they're from rather than adherence to some kind of an objective benchmark for what analysis looks like. And so that's something that's very critical to me because, I mean, it's like my sort of theory of change around, I mean, it's like what a public policy class should do is not to produce students that memorize a certain four, six, or seven step policy sequence, but in fact are able to, no matter where they're from, whether they decide to become elected officials or they're just sort of concerned community members, they're able to have some tools that they can use from their position and from their role in community. That's what I want them to take away from that. And so I start doing this from the very first day. I mean, it's like my favorite thing to do. I did it last semester and this semester as well. I've done it with groups that I've worked in the past. Is on the very first day, I have them as they come in. I have them write their name on the board. I tell them write your full name on the board. Some of them ask like, well, what do you mean by full name, etc. I have them write their full name. I then introduce, once everybody's seated, everybody's name is up there. I introduce myself, and then I give them a prompt of what I would like you to do is to tell a story of your name for 1 minute. So I do this, and then students come up and they one by one will do this. I do this to get them used to, first of all, I mean, it's like speaking in class, which is very, very essential in public policy, but then also used to the idea that who they are is an essential prerequisite for understanding the world. And a lot of them talk about their cultural backgrounds, they talk about their parents, they talk about who else in their family was named this. So it ends up being really interesting 1 minute discussions that give us all a quick insight into who's in the room. From there, I mean, the other challenge is to make sure that there are people who with deep opinions. I mean, it's like are able to have their say, but then also other people are able to do so as well. And so when I tell students, I mean, I recognize that some people are much more likely to speak up in class and others less. So in terms of their participation grade, I include active participation in class itself. I have weekly reflections that using the discussion board function on Brightspace before class, and then after class, I mean, the next day, I have students ask questions or reflect on other students' reflections. So the discussion board isn't just sort of dropped after class, but in fact, I mean, it's like students are still engaging with it. Another piece is that I scaffold the term paper, which is sort of the main analytic product, I mean, of the class, starting in the middle of the semester. I mean, so in fact, this is something I started this past Monday with a workshop first on how to take one of those reflections and expand on it by reflecting on what they learned in class through discussions, less lectures, readings that they might have had, etc. So how to expand on that. I then move on to an outline, etc., etc. I have them turn in a rough draft of a paper, which I then look at, and then the graded one is the final draft that they submit after they've gotten feedback from me. I also have them submit an abstract in the form of an elevator pitch. I mean, an elevator pitch is just like in 2 minutes, tell me what your paper is about. I mean, and why it's important, right? I mean, it's like so, which also serves to me as an abstract for the very final thing I have them do, which is I create a sort of a mock academic conference where students submit their papers to this conference, and I organize them into panels thematically. And then I serve as moderator and I ask them questions. And so the idea is to get them talking to one another about similar veins of similarity in their topics or differences in their topics. I don't ask them any trick questions. It's more just to like get them articulating why they said the things that they said, why they presented the arguments that they did. So basically, from beginning to end, I mean, what I want to do is to sort of see how they've moved, how they can articulate. I mean, it's like how they got to their personal experiences that, make them aware of their own values, make them aware of their own values and why they have certain points of view, and then also to be able to articulate how it's been challenged or supported through the experiences that they had. That's what I want to see in class. And so that's what I assess them based on. And for me, that's equitable because everybody comes in from a different point of view. Some people come with strong analytic chops, others come with just deep experience of the world and are just trying to make sense of it. And all of it for me, in my theory of change around public policy, is valid.
I
Amazing.
love that. Amazing. Thank you. Oh
Mm,
my gosh, I love that mock academic conference assignment. That's amazing. So
Thanks.
good. All right. I'm so excited about this. That was such a good intro. All right, Maria, go for it.
Okay. I'm going to be, can you hear me? Let's see. Yeah. Can you see my slides?
Yeah.
Yes,
You
Maria.
can
And
hear
yes,
me?
also.
I'm going to be more conventional. Christian, you were amazing. Just talk without slides. That's excellent. So this is me. I'm a biologist in the Department of Biological Sciences. I do research on Alzheimer's. I have a lab, and we are working now. We had a rat model of Alzheimer's. Now we're working with inducible pluripotent cells that are removed from uh, healthy individuals or patients that have Alzheimer's, and then they're removed from the skin of the patient, and then we put a cocktail of chemicals that makes them either neurons, brain neurons of different types, or other cells of the brain. And now we are trying to make a brain organoid, which is mixing all these cells together to mimic a brain. Of course, it's not going to be anything like a human brain, but it will have sort of some connections and so on. So, I have PhD students in the lab. I've graduated, I think, 19 PhD students, and but I've been here for a long time. So, and also, so I teach anatomy and physiology, and mostly in the fall. I used to teach both semesters, but then thankful the chair said that's too much and you're not having access to graduate students. So now I just teach the fall. We have about 700 students, between 600, 700 students, so a big class. Unfortunately, I do have to use slides because I don't think I could describe, physiologies just with words. I think to show the slides is a better way of teaching. And my students are the students in my class are most health science students. So they will be taking care of you and me when we are in trouble. So I take it a great responsibility to teach and prepare these students well because they're not going to have anatomy and physiology again in their programs in nursing, physical therapy, nutrition. Some pre-meds also take. I think, Kristen, you also teach A&P, right? One section or something. So I've been teaching for many years, and I use slides, I use notes, I post my notes so the students have access to my notes, they have access to my slides, and I teach on Zoom. I used to teach in person in the auditorium, but after with COVID, we switched to Zoom, and I like it very much because I think there's a much greater interaction with chat. The chat is always rolling with. Oh, I don't see the timer. Oh,
It's right above Christina's head.
oh, I see. Okay. So let me start with my. So the students have access to my recordings, my notes, my slides, and they still don't do as well as I would like. So let me go. So the problem is how to assess these students, right? So because there's so many, you cannot have essays. So it's a multiple choice exam, 60 questions, 60 minutes. And before COVID, we used to do a paper exam in the assembly hall. And it's a lot of work because you have to make 2 exams, 2 versions, so that the students don't cheat when they're next to each other. And you have to make all the photocopies and then organize them and then scan them with a Scantron scanner that is dying. There's not that many more to replace it. So I think going to an online program would be much better. So this semester we use the fall, not this semester, fall 2025, we use this platform, ExamSoft, and it's really, really outstanding. The problem is it's expensive, and I'll go through that at the end. But so basically, students use a laptop in the assembly hall, so it's in person, but online also. So the students bring their computer to the auditorium, and once I give them, they can upload the exam 48 hours before the exam, and it's blocked, so by a password. So when everybody's sitting in the assembly hall, I give them the password. At the beginning, I projected the password, and it was awful because students would take a picture and send it to their friends outside the hall. So I learned that that was not a good idea. So I had to shout it out in the assembly hall. The password is very complex. So then once the students enter the password and they have the exam, then the computer becomes a typewriter. Everything is blocked. They don't have access to internet, to any applications. So it works very, very well. And you don't need Wi-Fi, which is a big, big advantage because in the assembly hall, if you have 600, 700 people using Wi-Fi, becomes very, very slow. So just to give you an example, here in 2024, which we were still in COVID time, these were the grades for my exams, right? Exam 1, average 92. Exam 2, average 90. And remember, there's like 600 and something students, right? And I said, no, before my averages were 70s, which is good, because see, it's an average, it's a bell curve. But here, obviously, when I was giving the exam via Blackboard, not ExamSoft, so previous years, the students used illegal means to take the exam. They would form groups, although I tried everything. I tried making the questions more complex so that they would take time and would not have time to copy and paste. I have 3 minutes. Okay, so I said, no, this cannot be it. This doesn't work. So what happened is they didn't learn. They had very high grades in the lecture, and then they didn't study for the anatomy, which is the lab part, which is very hard. They have to learn the names of 600 muscles and hundreds of bones and so on. But they didn't care because they had a good grade, an A in the lecture. Then they could discard the lab grade, and the average would still give them a C or above. So they could still apply to the programs. So it was really a disaster. I wasn't doing a good job. So then here comes I already said most of this, the advantage of using ExamSoft. So it's very good. You upload the questions onto the exam, and immediately after the exam ends, the students can have access to the grade, depends when we want to give them access to, and they can see what they did wrong, what they did right. We can analyze the grades. For example, question 50, the students, the whole class failed that question. So maybe the question was my problem, not the student. So you can analyze each question, how the students answered that question. So the big advantages is no Wi-Fi needed. Okay, and they have excellent technical and training support. They have 24 hours for students and faculty. I've used it many times. You can ask questions. You're online in a chat. It's outstanding. So these are the steps. I'm not going to go through what you have to do because I want to get to the last. So this is what you can see. You can see how many students are in the class, how many students downloaded the exam. So here, this was a day of the storm. There was a big storm. So many students didn't make it. But many students didn't download the exam even. So they were not planning on taking the exam. And then 578 finished the exam and uploaded. So all this information, and here you can see that you have the names, the ID of the students, when they downloaded, when they uploaded, and then you can send emails, you can look at the details, and as soon as the exam is over, you have all the different information, the average, low score, high score, the distribution of the grades. And here again, I'm showing the exam in 2025 with the ExamSoft compared to 2024 Blackboard, where there was this huge above 90, and here you have a distribution. Okay, so let me get to the end, which I think is the most important. So this is what can go wrong. So I can make the slides available if you want, because I don't have time. But this is what I wanted to show you. So this was before COVID, when the exams were on paper, and you can see it's sort of a bell curve. Then this is when we were using Blackboard online, and you can see that it's shifted tremendously horrible. And now with ExamSoft, you go back to the bell curve in terms of grades. So this, to me, this is the most important slide. This is a very urgent problem, and I'd like to have Kirsten really work very hard with me to have them make these programs available. So the ExamSoft is very costly. It can $60 per student, so $36,000 for 600 students. We can use Brightspace, but the problem is the auditorium. They have to improve the auditorium, implement attendance, because if we don't take attendance, the students will take the exam somewhere else when they're not supervised. So, and I want to thank Barbara Ravita. She was a nurse in school and she was outstanding. So I'm sorry I went a little bit over. Okay.
No, that was perfect. Thank you so much. It was so
Okay.
excellent. I had never been introduced in this way to ExamSoft, so that is so excellent. Thank you,
Okay.
Maria. So excellent. Kirsten, you're on.
Hi, everyone. So I'm kind of in the same vein as Maria, trying to find innovative ways in assessing our large lectures. So Justin and I worked together. Let me share my screen. Justin and I worked together for a large portion of the semester to get these get exams for, large groups of students in chemistry. So what is my fall dynamics? I had 884 students in a large lecture course. And as Maria said, there's these huge logistical issues with giving paper exams. And for me, it's multiplied because my office is in Thomas Hunter, yet my classes are in the auditorium in the North Building. So getting exams, sorting exams, because I always use more than one version in my office, and then getting them back across from building to building to make sure students so I can have them. And it was kind of like, which one of these evils do I want to deal with? So we attempted a solution to design exams on Brightspace using the quiz feature and lockdown browser, which is very similar to ExamSoft. The only thing is that it requires Wi-Fi. So in addition to doing Brightspace, because like Maria said, they could be somewhere else taking the exam and not in the auditorium. So we use Top Hat with the geolocation attendance feature. So Top Hat is free now if we just want to do it for attendance and in-class participation. So we utilized that. We were like, yes, we troubleshooted. We made sure that everything would work. So what did we do? I collaborate with Justin. We got access to extra computers with Lockdown Browser from, I think it was from the education department. We worked with the library so students could have access to computers. We set the exam settings to have only specific IP addresses in related to the Wi-Fi. We changed that up a little bit. We switched it from just the Wi-Fi, like overall Hunter Wi-Fi to only Wi-Fi that would be accessible like on this campus. We did all sorts of things to try to make sure that the settings were set to ensure that only students who were present on campus were taking the exam. We communicated with students that they needed to download Lockdown Browser on the exam, that they need to sign in with Hunter Secure for the best Wi-Fi. We set up the Top Hat, and we also had proctors that were available to help students. Now, in theory, this was an awesome idea. In practice, not so much. And the reason is that there were multiple challenges. So either the Lockdown Browser, students weren't able to access it. There were Wi-Fi issues. There were too many students on the server at the same time. There were glitches with the Brightspace that maybe because it was too many students, some students were not able to open their exam, or for some, the exam kind of closed in the middle, or while they were in the middle of taking the exam, it skipped to another page. So even though it might have been only about 30 to 50 students for each exam, that's still enough students to, make you feel like as an instructor, like, hey, this is kind of unfair, right? So in consultation with Justin, and I must say, Xiao Chuan was there every exam, the whole entire team, the digital team were there helping with students, because like some students, their device, like if they had a Google, like a Google device, they couldn't get into the exam. So we would have lines of students with issues trying to get in. Like some of them forgot their MFA. They couldn't remember their multi-factor. Like there were so many things that in theory should not have happened, but they did. No matter what we tried various changing settings. So in Brightspace, you can set an exam to show only like 5 to 6 questions at a time. You could set it to show 1 question at a time. So I figured if I show 5 to 6 questions at a time, that's just like a paper exam. They can do that. And if the Wi-Fi goes out, they'll still be on that same page. In theory, that's great. But for some, it would skip to the next page when they came back on with Wi-Fi. So there were a lot of issues that happened. Some of them, their answers weren't submitting at all. So I was like, you know what? This is horrible. So what do? Back to the drawing board, back to paper exams. But we still had the issue. Oh, and one thing that I didn't mention about Top Hat was that Top Hat has a geolocation. However, it's within 100 meters. So what does that mean? That means that they could be on the 3rd floor, or they could be in the library, or they could be somewhere not in the auditorium taking the exam, right? They could be anywhere. I actually caught students sitting outside of the auditorium trying to take exams, like multiple students sitting outside the auditorium, either on the second floor or in the corner by, what is that? Is that not Park Avenue. Yeah, that is Park Avenue. By Park Avenue, by that little exit on the first floor, all over in the hallway, to the exit towards 68th Street. So it just didn't work. So back to paper exams. So I did regular exams on paper, multiple choice, fill in the blanks, word search. I did attendance with Navigate Access. Maria also used this. We worked with Brian Buckwall, where students entered their MPL ID, and we graded with Gradescope. So what is Gradescope? Gradescope is free for us as instructors, and for students, we have a license. You just upload a student roster. You can download a bubble sheet. And these bubble sheets are actually customizable. So you can and you'll see on the next slide how I rearranged the bubble sheet. You can put whatever things you want, and they auto score. You upload, you create an exam, you put in the answer key, you scan the sheets, you upload them, you submit them, and you auto score. If you want to be a little bit, snazzy, you can do short answer questions as well. And so, again, you create an assignment, you upload a template. So I try to keep it easy. You notice on the bubble sheet that I removed a bunch of questions, and then I put spaces for my short answers on this page. And you upload the student work, and Gradescope will auto group answers, or you can manually group them and then you grade them. So this is kind of like the view of me uploading the template, where I set the region for the name, the ID. And for this, it's the same answer sheet, but I'm only grading these sections. So Gradescope allows you to select the area for which you want to grade student work. So that's Gradescope. And you also have data, analytics and that sort of thing. The attendance with Navigate, you contact the Navigate team, ask them for permission. And Maria, guess what? I still have permission from last semester. So if we want to use it again, you automatically have permission. You give them the proctors and your information, and we can use an iPad, an iPhone, an Android device, a laptop, desktop computer, and students just come and they enter their MPL ID on the device. And it took us maybe about 12 minutes at the end of the exams, and then you could download the reports from Navigate. So this is what it looks like when students go to submit. They click submit, they say you've submitted. And this is just a page of how you can download the data. So what are our takeaways? You can use Brightspace with Lockdown Browser. It will work, I believe, with maybe less than 200 students. I think it still would work, which wouldn't overburden the network. Or we can go back to grading paper exams using Gradescope. No need for going to the Scantron machine, but you do have to create a PDF and upload to scan your grades, your exams. And the attendance for Top Hat, it works for regular class, but I wouldn't say use it for exams. The Navigate kiosk is awesome. It just takes a little bit of time. It took us about 12 minutes at the end. So with smaller classes, I think it would work awesome. Maybe 5 minutes. And you could actually take attendance in the beginning and at the end to make sure the same people who came in to take the test were the same people who didn't. And one of the things that happened with Top Hat is I had a student who had 2 people sign in for them. 2 people. And they were never there. So thank you. And hopefully Justin will add some info to go along with this.
So good. It's so interesting, right? For those of us who don't teach large lecture classes, this is like a thing. So I appreciate it so much. Yay. Such good perspective. Oh my gosh. All right, Justin.
All righty. Yeah, well, I'm just going to expand a little bit on what Kirsten just said, and talk a little bit more specifically about some of the challenges we encountered and some of the things you can do without necessarily pulling out all the stops like we did for Kirsten's class. So yes, there were a lot of issues. It was a little hard. It was a little hard for me to see the students struggling who were having problems. So it turned out that it was frustrating too because the biggest Achilles heel in using the lockdown browser is that the students do need completely uninterrupted access to the internet. So if I remember for the first exam, we found that there were a lot of students using the Hunter Guest network, and the Hunter Guest network will time out after a certain number of hours. I think I was told it was 3 hours. So say if the student gets to campus very early, logs into Hunter Guest, the end of that 3 hour mark for some of the students would land right in the middle of their exam. So lockdown browser at least will warn the students saying that their answers are not being saved because they're not connected to the internet. And then they'd have to be logged back into lockdown browser. So that was very much a challenge. We tried to remediate that by applying IP restrictions. So what these numbers you see before you are different IP ranges that are that are used by the campus Wi-Fi. So this first number, if I remember correctly, this range covers Hunter Secure for students. This range covers the wing of the third floor of Hunter North, where any students would be taking the exam on computers in the accessibility center. So for any students with accommodations who need to use the computers there in the lab, they're going to fall between one of these ranges. This range covers staff and faculty access to Hunter Secure, and this range covers edu-roam and Hunter Guest. So you can actually restrict the students' access to the exam by applying these IP restrictions, and feel free to reach out to me and I can share the actual numbers you have to enter here in Brightspace under IP restrictions. So that way you can at least ensure that the students are connected to the campus Wi-Fi. You can't be 100% sure that they're in the room. What I was really hoping we'd be able to do would be to restrict the access to the internet so that we can. Oh yeah, and Christian asked me. Yeah, you can ask me for the list of IP addresses if you want it, but they're not publicly available. Although I guess maybe they will be once the recording of this is posted. The yeah, you can't. What I really wanted to do was to have a way to have students to be certain that the students' access to the network was routed through an individual Wi-Fi access point or group of access points. So say the access points that serve the assembly hall, it'd be great to restrict them just to those, but unfortunately that wasn't possible. The for the oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah. So the other issue with lockdown browser is that yeah. So there's that, and these restrictions can be applied to any exam on Brightspace. They don't require the use of the lockdown browser. So even if you don't want to use the lockdown browser, you can apply these restrictions if you want. In addition, you can apply passwords as you all probably know. And you can also apply special access for students who may need extra time or taking the exam on a different date, or for students that aren't able to get the lockdown browser to work. You can exempt individual students from the requirement for the lockdown browser. Some of the other settings you can adjust with the lockdown browser. You can lock them into the browser until the exam is completed. Of course, that causes the issue of the students need to go to a proctor to enter this password to get out of it if there's a problem. So say if they lose access to the Wi-Fi and they need to reconnect to the Wi-Fi, they have to see a proctor. You can configure it to also allow access to specific external domains and to enable the calculator, which helped a lot. So for Kirsten's class specifically. In addition, the way you would, so of course, the the lockdown browser can only do so much. Students can circumvent it. If they do, you can lockdown browser will lock it. So it'll show exactly when the student closed the lockdown browser and give a reason as to why it happened. So say in this instance we were testing, the browser quit because the computer went to sleep, or the user activated the fast user switching. Like if you have a Mac, if you touch the little Touch ID button, you'll see it'll lock you out right away and lock the screen. That will also close the lockdown browser. So it's important to note that it really can't be guaranteed that that the lockdown browser is going to fully lock down the machine unless it's on a college-controlled machine. If it's on a student's personal computer, it's difficult. It makes it a lot harder to circumvent the restrictions. It makes it a lot harder than just simply opening another tab in your browser and opening ChatGPT and typing in all the questions. But it is possible. We actually had a request from an instructor who was using it, who found that a student was using ChatGPT during the exam. I got to, it was a little fun and a little creepy. I got to do a little bit of investigation where I did some research on the tools that students use to circumvent these tools like Lockdown Browser and Exemplify, and learned a little bit more about what's possible. Basically, what I gleaned from it is, there's never going to be a mousetrap that's good enough for students not to be able to invent a better one. So if they really want to cheat, they're going to find a way. The only way to really restrict it, or to give you the best chance of restricting it, is to give the exam on a computer that students don't control, meaning like a college-owned computer in a computer lab. Another thing that I wanted to take note of, because I know Maria pointed this out, that accommodations can be set on a per user basis or per student basis. I do want to make sure that everyone knows that you can do that in Brightspace as well. So say if you want to apply exemptions for a student, instead of doing it in special access for each individual exam, you can, in the class list, choose the edit accommodations option. And here you have the option to modify the time limit. So this will apply to every quiz that the student takes. So instead of doing it on a per quiz basis, you can do it on a per student basis. The other bit of information I'd love to share is I've worked with some faculty in nursing. Barbara Ravita and I worked together on a script or an application that will take the output of ExamSoft, and I've worked with a handful of other instructors at Hunter for GradeScope, that will take the grade output and reformat it in a format that you can import directly into Brightspace. So instead of having to manually reform the export or copy the grades by hand, which can be extremely tedious because nursing has some of those giant sections too, the app will just convert it one-to-one. So you can export the CSV from ExamSoft and convert it to a format that Brightspace can import directly. So you don't have to deal with managing the grades. So that can make it a little bit easier. But yeah, and we certainly, if folks are have any questions about using Lockdown Browser or other tools like that, we do encourage you to reach out to us. There are some instructors using Lockdown Browser. I have seen it work. It adds a layer of complexity, especially if students are using computers that they don't have administrative access to, like loan computers that don't have it installed. And again, it's not foolproof, but it can certainly help, especially for larger classes where you can't see what every student's doing. But, especially for Kirsten's class, I wanted to see if there was a way to eliminate the multiple trees that had to be worth of paper that had to be used to print thousands of sheets for almost 1,000 students. And we got close, but we couldn't quite get there with Lockdown Browser. Maybe there'll be other solutions, like ExamSoft, that might work a little bit better, that don't require that completely constant connection to the internet.
So good. Thank you, Justin. Thanks for providing context too. We'll redact those IP addresses before we post the video. That was a good noticing, Valerie. So good. So we have like a couple of minutes for questions. Thank you. This was so good. I learned